Section 1. Lucas Stone strode into the towering glass building of Carter Enterprises, his confidence as unshakable as ever. He adjusted the cuffs of his designer suit, barely glancing at the receptionist who greeted him with a polite nod. He was here for a senior executive position, one he was certain he would secure. After all, he was Lucas Stone. His reputation in the business world was solid. Brilliant strategist, ruthless negotiator, a man who turned struggling companies into gold mines. This was just another step up the corporate ladder, another company that needed his expertise. He stepped into the elevator, alone for now, and checked his reflection in the mirrored walls. His blue-gray eyes were sharp, his dark hair neatly styled, his chiseled jaw set with purpose. He'd prepared for this. He'd researched the company, reviewed their acquisitions, and anticipated every possible question they'd throw at him. Everything was under control, but nothing could have prepared him for her. The moment the elevator doors opened on the top floor, he stepped into the executive suite, his gaze instantly locking onto the woman standing behind the massive mahogany desk. For a second, he froze, because there, standing with the poise of someone who owned the entire world, was Amelia Carter. His heart slammed against his ribs. He hadn't seen her in years, not since. The past came rushing back so fast it nearly knocked the air from his lungs. The quiet, bookish girl from college, the one who used to steal glances at him across the lecture hall, the one who had mustered up enough courage to ask him out during their final year, and the one he had rejected without a second thought. Lucas had been young, arrogant, and too focused on the popular girls who fawned over him. Amelia had been sweet, intelligent, but too shy to capture his attention back then. And now, she was powerful, unrecognizable, and she was looking at him like she had already decided his fate. He forced himself to move, walking into the office as if he weren't completely caught off guard. He extended his hand, keeping his expression neutral. "Miss Carter," he greeted smoothly. "It's a pleasure to meet you." She didn't shake his hand. Instead, she leaned back against her desk, her dark brown eyes assessing him with a calm, unreadable expression. "You look surprised," she said. Her voice was different, steady, commanding, nothing like the quiet girl he remembered. Lucas recovered quickly. "I wasn't expecting you." A small smile curved her lips, but there was no warmth in it. "I imagine you weren't." She gestured to the chair in front of her desk. "Sit." He obeyed, though something about this situation was off. She wasn't just an executive. She was the CEO, his potential boss, and that changed everything. "Let's get one thing straight, Mr. Stone," Amelia said, crossing her legs. "I didn't call you in for this interview because I need you. I called you in because I wanted to see if you've actually changed." Lucas blinked. "Changed," he repeated. Her gaze didn't waver. "Since college," she clarified. A slow, sinking feeling settled in his gut. So she hadn't forgotten. She remembered everything. And now the girl he once overlooked was sitting across from him, holding all the power. Lucas cleared his throat, leaning slightly forward. "Amelia, It's Miss Carter," she interrupted, her tone sharp. His jaw tensed. Right, this wasn't going to be easy. "Miss Carter," he corrected smoothly. "I understand we have history, but I assure you I'm here strictly for business." Her gaze flickered with something unreadable. "Are you?" Lucas met her stare head-on. "I have the skills and experience to help your company expand internationally," he said. "I know how to secure high-level investors, negotiate deals that—" "I don't need a lecture on your resume," she cut in. "I read it. Impressive, but I'm not convinced." His brow furrowed. "Not convinced?" She studied him, tilting her head slightly. "You were arrogant in college," she mused. "And from what I've seen, not much has changed." Lucas gritted his teeth. "I was young," he said carefully. "I made mistakes, like everyone else." Her lips curled slightly. So you admit it was a mistake?" He hesitated. "Rejecting me." His chest tightened. She was testing him, waiting for him to slip up. He had spent years in boardrooms negotiating with some of the most ruthless people in the business world. But this felt like the hardest meeting of his life. Lucas leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "I didn't see you for who you really were back then," he admitted. "And I regret that." Her expression didn't change. "Do you?" "Yes." Silence stretched between them. Then, Amelia stood. "Good," she said. "Then maybe you deserve a chance." His heart leaped. "I do." she smirked. On one condition. Lucas straightened. I'm listening. Amelia circled the desk slowly, stopping just beside his chair. She leaned down slightly, her voice lowering. You'll start from the bottom. He blinked. What? You'll work under someone else, she clarified. Prove yourself like everyone else does. No fancy titles, no special treatment. Lucas stared at her. She was serious, deadly serious. I'm overqualified for that, he said, unable to stop himself. She raised a brow. Then walk away. His jaw locked. He could leave right now. Walk out and never look back. But then what? He'd spend the rest of his life knowing that the one woman he had wronged the most had bested him. He wasn't about to let that happen. He wasn't going to lose to her. Lucas inhaled slowly, meeting her gaze. Fine, he said. I'll do it. Her smirk deepened. Good. Report to the department head on Monday. He nodded and stood, but before he could leave, Amelia spoke again. Oh, and one more thing, Lucas. He turned back. Her eyes flickered with something mischievous. I hope you can handle a little humility. His stomach tightened, because something told him this was just the beginning. Section 2. Lucas left Amelia's office feeling like he had just stepped out of a battlefield. The moment he exited the glass doors, the tension in his shoulders refused to ease. He had walked in expecting to be offered an executive role, but instead, he had been humiliated, forced to start at the bottom of a company he could have easily been running. She was testing him. Fine, he could handle a challenge. Lucas had built a name for himself in the corporate world by tackling the impossible, and if Amelia Carter thought she could break him, she had another thing coming. The problem? He hadn't counted on just how serious she was about making him work from the bottom up. When he arrived at Carter Enterprises on Monday morning, he expected to be assigned to a mid-level managerial position. Instead, he found himself shoved into the marketing department, a division he had little experience in. Lucas Stone, a man who had closed multi-million-dollar deals, was now sitting at a desk surrounded by fresh college graduates, brainstorming social media campaigns. Welcome to the marketing team. A woman with auburn hair and glasses greeted him with a polite but slightly amused smile. I'm Rachel, your supervisor. Supervisor. The word nearly made him grit his teeth. Rachel flipped through a stack of papers. Since you don't have much experience in marketing, I'll assign you to assist James with competitor analysis for now. Lucas clenched his jaw. Before you protest, Rachel interrupted, tilting her head. These are Miss Carter's direct orders. She said you should be treated like any other new hire. His fists curled at his sides. He could see her now, probably sitting in her pristine office, smirking at the thought of him doing entry-level work. He exhaled slowly. Fine, he could play this game. Lucas spent the entire day gritting his teeth through work that was, quite frankly, beneath him. He had managed companies, built financial empires, and yet here he was, creating spreadsheets on target demographics. By lunchtime, his frustration was boiling over. He grabbed his coffee and stormed toward the executive floor, determined to confront Amelia. He wasn't about to be treated like a glorified intern. But when he reached the glass doors of her office, he hesitated. Through the glass, he could see her sitting at her desk, deep in conversation with someone on the phone. Unlike earlier, when she had been cool and calculating, now she looked different, softer. Her dark brown hair was swept into a neat bun, but a few loose strands framed her face. Her lips, usually pressed into a tight, unreadable line, were slightly parted as she spoke. Lucas had seen dozens of powerful women in his life, CEOs, executives, investors, but none of them had ever intrigued him the way Amelia Carter did, and that bothered him. He shouldn't care, shouldn't notice things like the way she tapped her pen against her desk when she was thinking, or how she still wore simple jewelry instead of the extravagant diamonds most women in her position flaunted. She was just another CEO, another powerful figure standing in his way, but his mind kept whispering, she wasn't always this way. He used to know her, or at least he had thought he did. Lucas inhaled sharply, turned on his heel, and walked away. Maybe he wasn't ready to face her just yet. The next few weeks were hell. If Amelia was trying to break him, she was doing a damn good job of it. She made sure he was kept busy with tedious tasks, throwing him into unfamiliar projects that forced him to struggle to keep up. But if she thought he would quit, she was dead wrong. Lucas adapted. He worked late, studied marketing strategies, and proved, again and again, that he was still one of the sharpest minds in the industry. By the end of the third week, even Rachel, his supervisor, looked impressed. "You're actually taking this seriously," she noted, watching him sift through data. Lucas smirked. "Did you think I wouldn't?" Rachel shrugged. "Honestly, I figured you'd quit by now. Most men in your position wouldn't last a week in an entry-level job." Lucas glanced up. "Most men in my position wouldn't have something to prove." Rachel raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. By the fourth week, Lucas was beginning to understand Amelia's strategy. She wasn't just punishing him. She was watching, testing him. She wanted to see if he would crack, and Lucas had no intention of giving her the satisfaction. So, when she called him into her office that Friday afternoon, he was ready. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him, and met her gaze head-on. "Miss Carter," he greeted smoothly. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" She leaned back in her chair, watching him carefully. "I see you haven't quit," she said. Lucas smirked. "Disappointed?" Her lips twitched slightly. "Amused." Lucas's eyes narrowed. She was playing with him. And yet, for the first time, he wasn't annoyed. He was intrigued. "How's marketing treating you?" she asked, tilting her head. Lucas exhaled, crossing his arms. "I've learned more about social media algorithms than I ever cared to." Her eyes glimmered with amusement. "I have to admit, Lucas," she mused, "I thought you'd walk out after the first week." He smirked. "You don't know me as well as you think you do." A flicker of something crossed her gaze, something almost unreadable. "Maybe not," she admitted. Silence stretched between them. For the first time since he had started working here, the air between them wasn't charged with tension. It was something else, something dangerous. Lucas took a slow step forward. He shouldn't feel this way. Not about her, but there was something about Amelia Carter that drew him in. Something he had never noticed back when she was just a quiet girl in college. And that terrified him. But before he could speak, Amelia straightened. "I have a new assignment for you," she said, all business again. Lucas blinked, pulling himself back. "I'm listening." She slid a folder across the desk. "You're being transferred to corporate strategy." Lucas's brows lifted. Finally, a real challenge, a chance to prove himself on his turf. "Under one condition," Amelia added. His gaze met hers. "What's the catch?" She leaned forward slightly. "You'll be reporting directly to me." Lucas's chest tightened. Directly to her? Amelia's lips curved slightly. "I hope you're ready, Lucas," she murmured, "because things are about to get a lot more interesting." And for the first time since he had started working at Carter Enterprises, Lucas wasn't sure if he was playing the game, or if she was playing him. Section 3. Lucas stared at the folder Amelia had just pushed toward him, his fingers itching to grab it. This was it, the real test. No more entry-level tasks, no more spreadsheets filled with consumer data. This was corporate strategy, the heart of the company, and she would be watching his every move. He wasn't sure if it was a reward or another form of punishment. Slowly, he picked up the folder and flipped it open. Inside were details of a high-profile merger Carter Enterprises was pursuing. Lucas's brows lifted slightly. This was big, bigger than he had expected. "You're bringing me into the Sterling Holdings deal?" he asked, voice even. Amelia nodded, crossing her legs. "I need someone sharp in my corner. And since you've proven you can handle pressure, I figured you might be up for the challenge." Lucas let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. "You're unbelievable." Her brows lifted. "Excuse me?" He leaned forward, resting his arms on the desk between them. "You made me start from the bottom, had me doing social media reports, and now, out of nowhere, you trust me with a billion-dollar acquisition?" She smirked. "Isn't that what you wanted?" Yes, but he wasn't about to admit that. Instead, he let his lips curl into a slow, knowing grin. "So I passed your little test?" Amelia tilted her head, regarding him with a look that made his pulse spike. "You could say that, but don't get too comfortable, Lucas. This is just the beginning." Oh, he was counting on that. Lucas flipped through the files quickly, scanning the numbers, the projected profit margins, and the risks involved in acquiring Sterling Holdings. The deal wasn't straightforward. The company was undervalued due to internal conflicts, but if Carter Enterprises played their cards right, it could be one of their most profitable ventures. And yet, something felt off. Lucas frowned. Sterling Holdings is family-owned. Why are they suddenly looking to sell? Amelia's lips thinned. The CEO, Graham Sterling, is dealing with personal legal troubles. The board is panicking and they want out before the company takes a hit. Lucas hummed, his mind already working through possible angles. So, we're swooping in to clean up the mess and take control. Exactly, Amelia confirmed. But there's a catch. Of course there was. She leaned forward slightly, her gaze locking onto his. The deal isn't guaranteed. Graham is still trying to maintain control and his board is split. If we want this, we need to convince the right people. Lucas smirked. Let me guess, you want me to handle negotiations? Amelia nodded. Partially, I need you to gain Sterling's trust. We have a meeting with him next week in Chicago. Lucas sat back in his chair, rubbing his jaw. So you want me to charm a man who's being pushed out of his own company? A shadow of amusement crossed her features. I heard you were good at charming people. I figured this would be a walk in the park for you. Lucas let out a soft chuckle. That was before you threw me into marketing hell. My skills might be a little rusty. She rolled her eyes. You'll be fine. There was a brief pause, a charged silence settling between them. For the first time since he had started at Carter Enterprises, Lucas and Amelia weren't at war. It was a dangerous feeling. Lucas shifted in his seat, forcing himself to focus. All right, I'll handle it. But tell me something, Amelia. Her eyes flickered with curiosity. What? He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Why me? Her expression didn't change, but he noticed the slightest hesitation before she answered. Because you don't give up. Lucas felt something tighten in his chest. He wasn't sure what he had expected her to say, but not that. Their eyes held for a beat longer than necessary before she stood abruptly. Get familiar with the details. We leave for Chicago on Monday. Lucas smirked as he rose to his feet. Looking forward to it, boss. She shot him a glare, but he swore he saw a flicker of amusement before he turned and walked out of her office. The next few days were a blur of preparation. Lucas threw himself into research, analyzing Sterling Holdings' financial reports, company culture, and market position. The more he dug into the company's history, the more intrigued he became. The Sterling family had once been one of the most powerful names in the industry, but internal scandals and legal troubles had tarnished their reputation. Graham Sterling was desperate to hold on to control, but it was clear that his own board had lost faith in him. By the time Monday rolled around, Lucas was ready. The private jet Carter Enterprises had chartered for the trip was nothing short of luxury. Leather seats, an open bar, and enough space to hold a small boardroom meeting. But Lucas was more focused on something else. Amelia. She was already seated when he arrived, flipping through a file with a concentrated expression. Her dark hair was pulled into a sleek ponytail, and she wore a navy blue business suit that screamed power. He slid into the seat across from her. Morning. She barely looked up. You're late. Lucas smirked. We're flying private, Amelia. There's no such thing as late. She shot him a look. Tell that to someone who values their time. Lucas chuckled. I do, I just also value a good espresso before a long flight. She sighed but didn't argue. Instead, she pushed a tablet toward him. I've scheduled back-to-back meetings in Chicago. We'll be handling negotiations directly with Sterling and his CFO. Lucas glanced at the itinerary. It was packed, but that didn't surprise him. Amelia didn't do half measures. Let me guess, he mused. You want me to play nice while you handle the hardball tactics? Amelia's lips curved slightly. Something like that. Lucas leaned back in his seat, watching her carefully. You know, Amelia, I'm starting to think you might actually trust me. She let out a soft scoff. Don't push it, Lucas. But for the first time since they had re-entered each other's lives, she didn't deny it. The flight to Chicago passed quickly, and before they knew it, they were stepping into the towering glass headquarters of Sterling Holdings. Lucas adjusted his suit as they walked toward the meeting room, glancing at Amelia. Ready to do some damage? She didn't hesitate. Always. He smirked. Maybe, just maybe, this partnership was going to be a lot more interesting than he had anticipated. As they stepped through the boardroom doors, Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Section 4. The boardroom of Sterling Holdings was nothing short of imposing. High ceilings, glass walls, and a massive conference table that seated a dozen executives who already looked skeptical. Graham Sterling, the man they needed to win over, sat at the head of the table, a cigarette smoldering between his fingers despite the no-smoking sign mounted on the glass behind him. Lucas had seen men like him before, powerful, desperate, and clinging to control. Sterling exhaled a slow stream of smoke, his eyes moving between Lucas and Amelia. So, you two are the ones trying to swoop in and claim what's left of my empire? Amelia, unfazed, slid a document across the table. Not claim, Mr. Sterling. Salvage. A few of the board members shifted uncomfortably. Lucas kept his expression neutral, though inside, he was enjoying the icy confidence in Amelia's tone. Graham scoffed, tapping his cigarette on a crystal ashtray. Salvage. That's a cute way of saying you think I'm done for. You're not done for, Amelia corrected. Yet, but you're on the verge and everyone in this room knows it. Lucas smirked. She wasn't here to play games. Graham's expression hardened. I built this company from nothing. Amelia leaned forward. And now it's drowning in lawsuits and shareholder panic. She gestured to the board members. They wouldn't be in talks with us if they believed you could turn things around. Lucas saw it, the flicker of doubt in Graham's eyes. The older man exhaled sharply, leaning back in his chair. Why should I sell to Carter Enterprises? Lucas took that moment to step in. Because the alternative is losing control on someone else's terms, he said smoothly. We're offering a deal where you walk away with power and dignity intact. You take our offer and you still have a stake in the future. Graham studied them, his fingers drumming against the table. He was listening. Good. One of the board members, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, leaned forward. What would Carter Enterprises' long-term vision be for Sterling Holdings? Amelia's response was instant. We don't believe in gutting companies for short-term gain. We invest. We restructure. We bring in leadership that works. Graham let out a bitter chuckle. Leadership that works. You mean leadership that replaces me? Lucas tilted his head. That depends, Mr. Sterling. How much are you willing to fight for this? The older man met his gaze, and for the first time, Lucas saw it. Hesitation. Graham wanted to fight. He wanted to believe he could fix things. But deep down, he already knew the truth. He wasn't going to win this war. Finally, Graham sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. I want to see your full proposal by the end of the week. Amelia didn't blink. You'll have it in 48 hours. Graham smirked. You don't waste time, do you? Lucas grinned. Not when we know what we want. The meeting ended with handshakes and unreadable expressions. As they left the boardroom, Amelia let out a breath she had been holding. Lucas glanced at her. You okay? She nodded. It's not a done deal yet. No, he agreed, but it will be. Back at their hotel, Amelia barely took a second to breathe before diving into work. Lucas watched her for a while, pretending to read over reports while she typed away furiously, her brows furrowed in focus. She was different when she worked, ruthless, sharp, unstoppable, and damn if that wasn't attractive as hell. You should take a break, he said finally. Amelia didn't look up. I will when I'm done. Lucas smirked. Famous last words. She ignored him, so he took it upon himself to grab her laptop and shut it. She glared. Lucas. Amelia, he mimicked, leaning back on the couch. Take a breath. One moment won't kill you. She exhaled sharply, rubbing her temples. Lucas studied her for a moment, then said, You always worked this hard? She met his gaze. Didn't have a choice. Lucas nodded slowly. I get that. She hesitated, then asked, What about you? You always planned to go into business? Lucas chuckled. When I was younger, I wanted to be a pilot. Amelia blinked, surprised. A pilot? He grinned. Yeah, thought flying planes sounded cool as hell. Then my father dragged me into one of his boardrooms and told me, You don't fly planes, you own them. Amelia let out a soft laugh. Sounds about right. Lucas shrugged. Business is fine, but if I had a choice, I'd probably be flying somewhere instead of arguing over contracts. Amelia tilted her head. So why are you here, Lucas? His expression grew serious. Maybe I like proving people wrong. Their eyes met, and for a moment the air between them was charged. But before either of them could say anything else, Amelia's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and frowned. We have a problem. Lucas sat up. What kind of problem? She turned the phone toward him and his stomach dropped. The screen displayed an article, one with a very familiar headline. Lucas Stone and Amelia Carter, CEO's past flame resurfaces in business takeover drama. Below it, photos of them together in the boardroom, leaving the meeting, even a picture of them at dinner. Lucas muttered a curse. Who the hell leaked this? Amelia's jaw tightened. Someone who wants to sabotage the deal. Lucas rubbed a hand over his face. Great. Now the press thinks we're some scandalous ex-lovers playing corporate chess. Amelia sighed heavily. This could ruin everything. Lucas's lips pressed into a thin line. Not if we get ahead of it. She glanced at him. And how do you plan to do that? He grinned. Simple, we give them a different story to talk about. Amelia raised a brow. Lucas, he leaned in, smirking. Trust me, you're gonna love this plan. She had serious doubts about that, but as Lucas's mischievous expression remained unwavering, she had no choice but to listen, because the only way to beat the media was to play the game better. Section 5. Lucas had always been good at handling the media, but this time, the stakes were higher. The article about him and Amelia wasn't just gossip. It was a ticking time bomb that could blow up their deal. Amelia sat on the edge of the hotel bed, scrolling through the endless stream of speculation and sensationalized headlines. Lucas Stone and Amelia Carter, power couple or business rivals. Inside the boardroom and the bedroom, a past affair that could reshape corporate power. Billionaire heir and CEO queen. Will they mix business with pleasure? She exhaled sharply, locking her phone. We need to shut this down before it affects the negotiations. Lucas, seated across from her, smirked. Or we use it. She narrowed her eyes. Use it how? Lucas leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Look, trying to deny this will just make the media dig deeper. But if we control the narrative, we shift their focus. We make this about business, not romance. Amelia gave him a skeptical look. And how do you propose we do that? Lucas grinned. A public appearance together. If we show up as two professionals handling a deal, they'll move on. Amelia hesitated. It made sense, but something about publicly standing beside Lucas again made her stomach turn. She tapped her fingers against her knee. Fine. But this isn't some grand gesture, Lucas. It's damage control. Lucas grinned. Whatever helps you sleep at night, boss. She shot him a glare before grabbing her phone to make the arrangements. The next evening, they arrived at a high-profile corporate gala, where dozens of CEOs, investors, and media reporters were gathered. Amelia stepped out of the black luxury car first, composed and elegant in a navy blue gown that screamed authority. Lucas followed in a sharp, tailored suit, looking every bit the billionaire heir who belonged in the spotlight. Cameras flashed instantly. Lucas, always a natural under pressure, smiled and offered Amelia his arm. Shall we? She hesitated, but finally took it, not because she wanted to, but because optics mattered. As they walked into the venue, whispers followed them. Are they really a couple? I heard they used to date in college. Maybe they're rekindling something. Amelia ignored them and focused on what mattered. Sterling Holdings investors were in the room. This was their chance to fix the damage and regain control. Lucas leaned down slightly, whispering near her ear. Relax. You look like you're about to rip someone's head off. She gave him a tight smile. I just might if this plan backfires. Lucas chuckled. Have a little faith in me. They mingled strategically, speaking with key figures, steering conversations back to business, ensuring the media caught nothing personal between them. And for a while, it worked. Until it didn't. Because the moment Amelia excused herself to grab a drink, a woman approached Lucas. Tall, blonde, stunning. Vanessa Blake, Lucas's ex. Amelia turned, instantly recognizing her. Her jaw clenched. Vanessa smiled sweetly. Lucas, it's been a while. Lucas kept his expression neutral. Vanessa, she tilted her head. I was surprised when I saw the news. You and Amelia Carter. Who would have thought? Lucas smirked. Business partners make good headlines. Vanessa gave a knowing smile. Right. And yet, you never looked at business partners the way you're looking at her. Lucas's smirk faltered slightly. Vanessa took a sip of her wine. Be careful, darling. She's not the same shy girl who used to worship you in college. Amelia, standing close enough to hear, stepped in before Lucas could respond. You're right, Amelia said smoothly. I'm not the same girl, and Lucas isn't the same guy. Vanessa turned to her, intrigued. Oh, and what kind of guy is he now? Amelia didn't miss a beat. One who doesn't need to entertain the past when he's too busy building the future. Lucas grinned. Damn, she was good. Vanessa chuckled, raising her glass in mock surrender. Well then, best of luck, Lucas. She walked away, leaving a tense silence between Amelia and Lucas. Lucas turned to Amelia, amused. Jealous? Amelia rolled her eyes. Please, I just don't have time for petty drama. Lucas smirked. Still, that was kind of hot. Amelia sighed, grabbing her drink. Focus, Lucas. But even as she said it, she couldn't shake the strange feeling in her chest. Why did Vanessa's words bother her? An hour later, the night was winding down, and the event was proving successful. Investors were reassured. The media had less to speculate on, and Sterling Holdings' deal was back on track. Amelia was about to leave when a text message flashed on her screen from an unknown number. You think your company is safe? Think again. Her heart skipped a beat. Lucas noticed her stiffen. What is it? She showed him the text. His jaw tightened. Someone's trying to shake us. Amelia's mind raced. Who would send this? Was it Graham Sterling trying to pressure them? A rival company? Someone with a grudge? Lucas looked around. We can't stay here, come on. Amelia followed as they slipped out of the venue, heading toward their car. Once inside, Lucas turned to her. This isn't just about a business deal anymore. Someone wants to destroy you. Amelia exhaled slowly, her grip tightening on her phone. I'm not going down that easily. Lucas smirked, his voice low. Good, because neither am I. Their eyes met. For the first time, it wasn't just business, it was war. And this time, they were in it together. Section 6. The weight of the anonymous message lingered in the air like an unshakable storm cloud. Amelia sat in the car, the city lights flashing past in a blur of gold and silver, but her mind was racing with questions. Who had sent that text? What did they mean by, you think your company is safe? Think again. Lucas, seated beside her, leaned back against the seat, his jaw tense. Do you have any enemies I should know about? Amelia scoffed, though there was no humor in her voice. Lucas, I run $1 billion company. I have competitors, rivals, and people who would love to see me fail. But I can't think of anyone who would be this bold. Lucas crossed his arms. What about Graham Sterling? Amelia hesitated. Graham was ruthless, but this didn't seem like his style. If he wanted to apply pressure, he'd do it through legal means or backdoor negotiations, not cryptic threats. Still, she couldn't rule anything out. I don't know, she admitted, but I will find out. Lucas studied her carefully. Then we do this together. Amelia turned to him, her eyes searching his. You don't have to get involved in this, Lucas. His lips curled into a smirk, but there was an intensity in his gaze that she had never seen before. You should know by now. I don't walk away from a fight, especially not one that involves you. Something flickered in Amelia's chest, but she pushed it down. She couldn't afford distractions, not when she was walking straight into a battlefield. The next morning, Amelia arrived at Carter Enterprises headquarters to find the entire office buzzing. Whispers followed her as she walked down the glass-paneled halls. Employees exchanged nervous glances, but no one met her gaze directly. She frowned. Something was off. Then her assistant, Naomi, rushed toward her. Amelia, you need to see this. Naomi handed over a tablet. Amelia's stomach dropped as she read the headline. Carter Enterprises faces financial fraud allegations. CEO Amelia Carter under investigation. Her grip on the tablet tightened. What the hell is this? Naomi swallowed hard. It started circulating early this morning. Someone leaked internal financial reports to the media, claiming we manipulated stock values. The SEC is already asking questions. Amelia's blood ran cold. This was deliberate, calculated, and she had a feeling it was just the beginning. She turned to Naomi. Call legal. Get PR involved, and schedule a meeting with our finance team immediately. Naomi nodded and rushed off. As Amelia marched into her office, her phone vibrated with a call. Lucas. She answered. I'm guessing you've seen the news. Yeah, his voice was dark. I'm on my way. Amelia leaned against her desk, exhaling sharply. She had dealt with scandals before, but this was an attack, and she needed to figure out who was pulling the strings. 20 minutes later, Lucas strode into her office. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. This isn't a coincidence, he said, tossing a newspaper onto her desk. Someone's coming after you. Amelia picked up the paper, skimming the article. It was riddled with half-truths and carefully spun lies, designed to damage Carter Enterprises' reputation. Who benefits from this? Lucas pressed. Who stands to gain if you take a fall? Amelia rubbed her temples. Graham Sterling, for one. If my company's stock drops, he could try to push me out and take control. Then there's the usual corporate sharks waiting for a misstep. Lucas shook his head. This feels personal. And the moment he said it, Amelia knew he was right. This wasn't just about business. Someone wanted her to suffer. But who? By noon, Amelia was seated at the head of a long conference table, surrounded by her top executives and legal team. "Let's get straight to the point," she said. "Where is this leak coming from?" The CFO, Mr. Reynolds, adjusted his glasses. "We're still investigating, but the documents the media obtained were internal, only accessible to a select few." Amelia's eyes narrowed. "So it's an inside job." A murmur spread across the room. Lucas, seated beside her, leaned back in his chair. "If someone on the inside betrayed you, that means they planted the documents, leaked them, and timed this perfectly. This isn't about a financial mistake, it's a setup." Amelia nodded. "We need to find out who's behind this before it spirals." The head of PR, Sandra, spoke up. "In the meantime, we need a public response. Investors are panicking, and we need to reassure them." Amelia's mind raced. A denial would seem defensive. Staying silent would make it worse. She needed to flip the narrative. Lucas leaned forward. "Hold a press conference." Amelia glanced at him. "You think that'll help?" Lucas smirked. "It won't just help. It'll turn this whole thing on its head." That evening, Amelia stood before a sea of reporters. Cameras flashed, journalists whispered, but she was calm, controlled. She owned the room. She adjusted the mic. "There have been rumors and accusations regarding Carter Enterprises. Let me be clear. These allegations are false. We operate with integrity and transparency. But I won't waste time defending myself against faceless attacks." She locked eyes with the cameras. "So to whoever orchestrated this, you failed. And I promise you, I will find you." A ripple of shock and admiration spread through the audience. Lucas, watching from the sidelines, smirked. That was the Amelia Carter he remembered. Fearless, unshakable. But even as the press conference ended, Amelia knew this wasn't over. Whoever was behind this wasn't finished. And the next move would be the most dangerous yet. Section 7. The press conference had temporarily silenced the storm, but Amelia knew it was only a matter of time before the next strike came. Whoever was behind the financial scandal wasn't backing down, and she needed to stay ahead of them. She stood in her office, arms crossed, staring out at the city skyline. The glow of New York's towering skyscrapers had always given her a sense of power, of control. But now there was an unsettling tightness in her chest. She wasn't just fighting for her company. She was fighting for everything she had built. Lucas walked in, shutting the door behind him. The stock took a hit, but it's stabilizing after the press conference. Investors are still cautious, but they're not pulling out. Yet. Amelia sighed. That means we bought ourselves time, but not much. Lucas leaned against her desk, arms crossed. We need to find out who is orchestrating this. If we go on the defensive, we'll just be reacting. We need to hit first. Amelia turned to face him. You have an idea. Lucas smirked. I have a plan. The next morning, Lucas was already seated in Amelia's private boardroom when she arrived. Laid out before him was a collection of files, reports, and surveillance footage. Late night? She asked, arching an eyebrow. Lucas shrugged. Figured I'd put my insomnia to good use. Amelia sat across from him, skimming through the documents. Tell me what you found. Lucas pointed to a timeline he had compiled. The leak was planned. The documents surfaced exactly 2 hours before the stock market opened, ensuring maximum damage. Whoever did this wanted panic, wanted uncertainty. But here's the interesting part. These documents aren't even real. Amelia's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Lucas tapped one of the reports. The numbers were doctored. They don't match up with our real financial statements. It's all fabricated to make it look like fraud. Amelia's jaw clenched. That means whoever did this had access to internal files. They copied real data, manipulated it, and then leaked it. Lucas nodded. Which means our mole is close. Amelia exhaled, gripping the edge of the table. Do you have a suspect? Lucas hesitated. I have 3. He slid 3 files toward her. Graham Sterling, the rival CEO who had been trying to push her out for months. Richard Nolan, the company's CFO who had the most access to financial records. Nathan Cole, her own executive assistant, who had mysteriously taken an abrupt leave of absence 3 days before the leak. Amelia's heart pounded. Nathan? She had trusted him for years. He was efficient, reliable, and had never given her reason to doubt him. I don't want to believe Nathan would betray me. she admitted. Lucas studied her. I get it, but we can't rule him out. Not yet. Amelia nodded, forcing herself to think rationally. We need proof before we make a move. Lucas smirked. That's why I set up a little trap. Amelia's eyes narrowed. What kind of trap? Lucas leaned in. We're going to leak fake financial records internally. Only 3 people will have access to them. Graham, Richard, and Nathan. If the documents end up in the media again, we'll know exactly who our rat is. Amelia stared at him for a moment before a slow smile spread across her lips. That's devious. Lucas grinned. I learned from the best. Over the next 24 hours, the trap was set. Amelia authorized a dummy report containing financial errors and ensured only 3 people could access it. Then they waited. By noon the next day, the fake documents had leaked. Amelia's heart pounded as Naomi rushed into her office. The same news outlet that published the first report just posted a second batch of leaked files. Amelia turned to Lucas. And? Lucas smirked, holding up his phone. And our mole took the bait. He slid his phone across the desk. The security logs showed who had accessed the file. Amelia's stomach dropped. Nathan Cole, her trusted assistant, her friend. Lucas watched the emotions flicker across Amelia's face. Shock, anger, betrayal. Are you okay? He asked quietly. Amelia set the phone down, her fingers trembling slightly. I trusted him. He knew everything about me. And this is how he repays me. Lucas exhaled. It's not just about trust, Amelia. He had access to everything. If he leaked this, what else did he steal? Amelia clenched her fists. Then it's time to confront him. Lucas nodded. Let's do it. Nathan walked into Amelia's office later that evening, his expression unreadable. You needed me, Amelia? He asked casually. Amelia didn't waste time. How long have you been working against me? Nathan's face barely flickered. I don't know what you're talking about. Lucas leaned against the desk, arms crossed. We know you leaked the reports. The only question is, who are you working for? Nathan's jaw clenched. I don't have to answer to you. Amelia stepped forward, eyes blazing. You don't have to answer to anyone, Nathan. But if you think I'll let you walk away from this unscathed, you clearly don't know me. Nathan hesitated, but then his expression hardened. You're right. I did leak the reports. Amelia's breath caught. She hadn't expected him to confess so easily. But I did it because you deserve it. Nathan sneered. You walk around this company like you own the world, like everyone is beneath you. You stole this company from men who built it, and now it's being taken from you. Lucas's hand curled into a fist. Who paid you? Nathan's lips curled into a smirk. Wouldn't you like to know? Before Amelia could respond, security entered the office. You're fired, she said coldly. Nathan laughed. You think this is over? This is just the beginning. As security dragged him out, Lucas turned to Amelia. That was too easy, he murmured. Amelia's stomach twisted because she knew he was right. Nathan had been a pawn, which meant the real threat was still out there. Section 8. The revelation of Nathan's betrayal sent shockwaves through Amelia's mind, but she knew Lucas was right. This wasn't over. Nathan was just a pawn in a much larger game, and whoever was truly orchestrating this wanted more than just a scandal. They wanted her gone. Sitting in her office long after Nathan had been escorted out, Amelia stared at the city lights beyond her window. Her company was under attack, her life's work, and for the first time in a long time, she felt the weight of it pressing down on her shoulders. Lucas, who had stayed behind after the confrontation, stood watching her from across the room. Talk to me, Amelia. What's running through that head of yours? She let out a slow breath, forcing her emotions down. We know Nathan was working with someone, but why? What's the end game? Lucas sat down across from her, his fingers tapping on the desk. I have a feeling it's not just about money. Whoever's behind this isn't just trying to discredit you. They want to remove you entirely. And that means we're dealing with someone who sees you as a threat. Amelia's eyes darkened. Then let's find out who that is. The next day, Amelia wasted no time in launching a full internal audit. Every contract, financial record, and digital footprint was scrutinized. Lucas, working alongside her, was relentless. He had his own team combing through business rivalries, backdoor deals, and hidden financial transactions. Then they found something. A pattern. Nathan had received large anonymous payments through offshore accounts, payments that coincided exactly with each of the leaks. Lucas leaned back in his chair, staring at the screen. This wasn't just a side deal. Nathan was being paid to systematically dismantle your company. And guess where the money is coming from? Amelia read the name on the screen and her blood ran cold. Graham Sterling, her longtime rival. The same man who had spent years trying to push her out of the industry. Amelia clenched her jaw. That son of a... Lucas smirked. Yeah, I figured you'd say that. Amelia's pulse quickened. Graham Sterling had been circling for years, waiting for a moment of weakness. Now he'd made his move. But what he didn't know, she wasn't about to go down without a fight. Later that evening, Amelia and Lucas sat in her office, strategizing their next steps. Lucas sipped his coffee, leaning back casually. So, what's the play here? Do we expose him outright? Leak the info to the press? Amelia shook her head. That's exactly what he wants. If we go public now, it'll look like I'm scrambling to cover up my own company's corruption. He'll use it to further discredit me. Lucas nodded slowly. So we hit him another way. Amelia smiled, a cold, calculated smile. We take away his leverage. Lucas raised an eyebrow. How? Amelia leaned forward. We turn his investors against him. If Graham is funding a covert corporate attack, then he's got financial backers who have no idea what's happening. If we expose his tactics to them, they'll pull their money, and he'll collapse under the weight of his own greed. Lucas let out a low whistle. That's ruthless. Amelia met his gaze. This is my company. He wants to take me down? He better be ready for a war. Lucas grinned. God, I miss this side of you. Amelia smirked. Then you're in for a show. The plan went into motion. Over the next few days, Amelia and Lucas quietly leaked information to key investors in Graham Sterling's firm. Nothing illegal, just facts, documents, reports, strategic inconsistencies that painted a picture of a CEO making reckless, underhanded plays. The reaction was instant. Calls from furious investors flooded Sterling Enterprises. Panic set in. Graham wasn't expecting this. By the end of the week, several of his key investors had pulled out. Lucas read the headlines from his phone, chuckling. Graham Sterling's net worth just took $1 billion hit. You're officially his worst nightmare. Amelia folded her arms, satisfied. Good. Let him know I'm not someone he can manipulate. Lucas looked at her, a strange warmth in his expression. You know, the Amelia Carter I met years ago would have just swallowed the loss and moved on. Amelia's expression softened slightly. Yeah, well, the Amelia Carter from years ago learned the hard way that you can't just let people take what's yours. Lucas tilted his head. What changed? She hesitated for a fraction of a second. You. She didn't say it out loud. Instead, she exhaled. Life. Lucas studied her for a long moment before nodding. Well, whatever it was, I like this version of you. For a moment, there was silence, charged, unspoken. Then Amelia cleared her throat. We still have a mess to clean up. Lucas smirked. Yeah, but at least now we're on offense. The war between Amelia Carter and Graham Sterling had officially begun. But something else had also started. Something neither she nor Lucas was ready to face yet. Because as much as they fought side by side, there was an undeniable shift happening between them. Something deeper. Something neither of them could ignore for much longer. Section 9. The fallout from Amelia's counterattack sent shockwaves through the industry. Graham Sterling's investors had begun jumping ship, his stocks plummeted, and whispers of internal struggles started to circulate. Amelia had landed a decisive blow, but the war wasn't over. As much as she wanted to savor the victory, she knew better than to let her guard down. Graham wouldn't go down without a fight, and she was right. The next morning, Amelia arrived at her office only to be met with a crisis. Her assistant, Claire, rushed up to her, pale-faced and frantic. Amelia, we have a problem. There's a rumor going around that you were involved in an illegal business deal overseas. Amelia stopped in her tracks. What? Claire handed her a printed news article. It just went live a few minutes ago. It's gaining traction fast. Amelia snatched the paper and read through the fabricated report. According to the article, she had allegedly been involved in an offshore scandal years ago, making secret backdoor deals that gave her an unfair advantage in the business world. The accusations were false, but they were damaging. Her jaw clenched. Graham, this was his retaliation. Lucas arrived moments later, his phone in hand, reading through the same article. His expression was murderous. That bastard, he muttered. He's trying to turn the tables on you. Amelia exhaled sharply. I should have seen this coming. Lucas stepped closer, lowering his voice. How do you want to handle this? She straightened her shoulders. We don't react, not yet. If we go on the defensive, we'll look guilty. We need to shut this down the right way. Lucas nodded. Damage control. We prove this is fake before it spreads too far. Amelia's mind was already racing with strategies. Claire, get legal on the phone. Lucas, I need you to reach out to your media contacts. We need to trace where this article came from and who fed them the information. Lucas gave her a knowing look. And if we find Graham at the center of it? Amelia's eyes darkened. Then we end him. The next 24 hours were chaotic. The false accusations spread like wildfire, with headlines questioning Amelia's credibility. Investors grew wary, board members started asking questions, and her entire reputation was suddenly at stake. But Amelia refused to let panic dictate her next move. Instead, she and Lucas worked relentlessly behind the scenes, dissecting every detail of the article and tracking its source. By midnight, they had their answer. It's Graham, Lucas confirmed, tossing his phone onto Amelia's desk. He fed a fake tip to an online news source with a history of publishing sensationalist content. It was a setup from the start. Amelia's fingers curled into fists. Then let's expose him, Lucas smirked. Already ahead of you. We've got proof that his company funded the publication. If we release it, his credibility is going to implode. Amelia leaned back, a slow, satisfied smile forming. Then let's give him a taste of his own medicine. The next morning, Amelia held a press conference. She didn't just deny the allegations, she obliterated them. Armed with irrefutable evidence, she revealed how Graham Sterling had orchestrated the smear campaign against her, using false narratives and bribes to manufacture a scandal. She stood in front of the cameras, unshaken. Graham Sterling has spent years trying to undermine me, she said, her voice steady. But today, I'm drawing the line. His attempt to discredit me has failed, and now the world will see him for what he truly is, a desperate man clinging to power. The impact was immediate. News outlets turned against Graham, calling him out for his underhanded tactics. His remaining investors fled overnight, and his company's stock took a devastating nosedive. He was finished. And Amelia? She had won. That evening, as the dust settled, Amelia and Lucas sat in her office, exhaustion creeping in. Lucas handed her a glass of whiskey. To your victory. She smirked, taking a sip. To our victory. Lucas leaned back, studying her. You didn't need me for this, you know. You would have taken him down on your own. Amelia set her glass down. Maybe, but it was easier with you by my side. A beat of silence passed. Then Lucas spoke again, his voice softer. I meant what I said before, Amelia. I'm not just here for the business. I'm here for you. She looked at him, something uncertain flickering in her gaze. Lucas. But before she could finish, Lucas leaned in, brushing a soft kiss against her lips. This time, Amelia didn't pull away, because for the first time in years, she wasn't just fighting for her company. She was fighting for herself. And maybe, just maybe, Lucas was part of that fight too. Section 10. The aftermath of Graham Sterling's downfall was swift and absolute. His empire collapsed overnight, his investors abandoning him like a sinking ship. By the end of the week, his company had filed for bankruptcy, and his name was tarnished beyond repair. Amelia stood at the top of her skyscraper looking down at the city. She should have felt victorious. After all, she had won. But her heart felt heavy, because now that the fight was over, she had to face something she had been avoiding for weeks. Lucas. Ever since that night in her office where he had kissed her and she hadn't pulled away, things between them had been different. The playful tension, the power struggle, it had all shifted into something deeper, something neither of them could ignore. And Amelia wasn't sure if she was ready for it. That evening, Lucas arrived at her penthouse unannounced. He didn't need to knock, he still had the key from when they had been working late nights together. He stepped inside, finding her sitting on the couch, a glass of wine in her hand. Drinking alone? He asked, closing the door behind him. She didn't look at him. Maybe I wanted to be alone. Lucas smirked, walking over. Liar, you knew I'd come. She sighed, swirling her wine in the glass. I don't know what you want from me, Lucas. He sat beside her, leaning forward, his elbows resting on his knees. That's a lie, too. You do know. Amelia set her glass down with a soft clink, finally turning to face him. You don't get it. This, whatever this is, it can't happen. Lucas's jaw clenched. Because of the past. Because of everything, she said. Because of what you did to me in college. Because I built my entire life on proving I didn't need you. Because I don't know how to be with you without feeling like I'm losing a part of myself. Lucas exhaled sharply. Damn it, Amelia. You're not losing anything. You're winning. We're winning. You proved to the world that you're stronger than anyone who's ever underestimated you. But when are you going to stop fighting me? Silence. Lucas ran a frustrated hand through his hair. I messed up, okay? I was a stupid kid who didn't know what he had. But I know now, and I don't just want you because you're powerful or successful. I want you because you're you. Amelia swallowed hard. Lucas, I love you, he said, cutting her off. Her breath caught in her throat. Lucas stood, pacing the room. I don't care if you need time. I don't care if you tell me to leave right now. But I need you to know, because if you walk away from this, it won't be because I didn't fight for you. Amelia stared at him, her heart pounding. This man who had once broken her heart without a second thought was now baring his own to her. And she realized something. She wasn't afraid of losing herself to him. She was afraid of what it meant if she let herself fall. But maybe she already had. She stood, stepping toward him. Say it again. Lucas frowned. What? Say it again? She whispered. His gaze locked onto hers. I love you. She let out a shaky breath. Good. Because I love you too. Lucas stilled. Then before she could say anything else, he closed the distance between them, crashing his lips against hers. This kiss wasn't soft. It wasn't careful. It was everything they had held back for years. When they finally pulled apart, Lucas pressed his forehead against hers, smirking. I knew you wouldn't be able to resist me forever. Amelia rolled her eyes, laughing. Don't ruin this moment, Stone. Lucas grinned, too late. And just like that, the war was over. But their story, it was only just beginning. Did you enjoy Lucas and Amelia's journey? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more. Hit that bell for more. Hit that bell for more.